origins are lost in the mists of antiquity. Jerusalem, holy city, religious capital of half of the human race. From its barren hills, philosophers and prophets have launched eternal laws of morality, brotherly love, and peace. Jerusalem, the world's most sacred city, also a city of terror, war, and blood. More wars have been fought at its gates than in any city in the world. To walk in and around Jerusalem is to walk over a sea of human blood. And the spilled blood here in Jerusalem of one man has affected and shaped the course of human events as no other in all of history. But this man called Jesus came down from the hills to Jerusalem to teach his sense of God and his law, and claiming to be the Son of God, created a furor within the powers that reigned. Knowing this, Jesus called together his disciples within the walls of the city for a last supper, for he had knowledge of what was to come. And in this room he made his farewells and established his sense of communion with God and himself for all Christians, for all times. Later that night, he and his followers went to a spot favored by Jesus for rest and prayer, the Garden of Gethsemane. Here, during the night, he suffered his most sorrowful hour and made his choice. And in this garden they came and arrested him and took him into the city to await trial. And on this now hallowed ground, Jesus Christ was condemned to death. They bound him naked to a column and beat him. In Hebraic law, the strokes were limited to 39. Roman slaves received 40. But for the man called Jesus, there was no limit. He was beaten so severely, his skin became detached, blood poured out. At each stroke, his body shuddered, but he remained silent, provoking the rage of his executioners. Finally, the flogging stopped. They moved him to the other side, where they threw an old cloak on his shoulders and put a reed in his hands for a scepter, and they plaited some wooden stocks covered with thorns and dug the caplet into his scalp. And each executioner in turn bowed before him and mocked, "Hail, King of the Jews." His silence was returned with anger, and they took a stick and smashed it across his nose. A blow on the head, and the crown of thorns dug deeper into his scalp. They tore the cloak from him and placed a crossbeam weighing over 100 pounds on his bleeding shoulders and made him walk barefoot on the stony road to Calvary. Often he fell, scraping his knees, which were already raw. The crossbeams dug into his shoulders and the wounds became deeper with each painful step. At the top of Golgotha, and he sank to his knees, and the crucifixion began. They hammered a nail in each wrist. The excruciating pain shot through his fingers, his hands, his shoulders, but still he did not cry out. His body was suspended by his arms, and his head leaned forward because the thorny crown prevented him from leaning against the cross. And they bent his knees and hammered nails in his feet, and all the muscles of his body began to spasm and cramp, and his face turned blue. And for 3 hours he remained on the cross, barely able to breathe, until finally he cried out, "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit." And he died. And a soldier drove a lance deep into his side, and out came blood and water. Joseph of Arimathea, a secret disciple of Jesus, in haste, for it was the eve of Passover Sabbath and all work had to cease by sundown, hurriedly obtained permission from Pilate, and with the help of Nicodemus, who brought with him a mixture of spices and a long linen cloth, as was the Hebraic custom of burial, took down the body from the cross, and followed by others, took the body and laid it in a newly hewn tomb in a garden close to Golgotha, to await final burial on Sunday morning. And sometime in the ensuing hours, the air around the tomb became electric. A trembling of the earth occurred, accompanied by a blinding, pulsating, radiant glow from within the tomb, causing the Roman guards to flee in fear and panic. On Sunday morning, Mary Magdalene saw that the stone had been moved away from the tomb and ran to the disciples, Peter and John. They came running and entered the tomb and saw only the linen cloth lying there. Today, in Turin, Italy, there is a linen cloth dating back to the time of Christ. This cloth is kept in a crypt above the high altar in a private chapel in the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. It has been here for 400 years. And on it, an image of a man who wore a cap of whose side was pierced, who was brutally beaten and crucified. Looking from the cathedral into the once private royal chapel of the House of Savoy, deposed ruling house of Italy, we see the grille in the altar, behind which is kept the cloth, or holy shroud as it is known. Sealed behind 3 locks, it is kept rolled up within a 4-foot-long silver casket, kept in an iron chest wrapped in asbestos in a long wooden box. It is 14 feet 3 inches long by 3 feet 7 inches wide. And it brings us to the incredible question, is it truly the burial cloth of Jesus Christ? For many centuries, this question has been the source of constant controversy, and for this reason it has rarely been unveiled, but has been revered by its believers as Christendom's most holy relic. But now, to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the Holy Shroud in its present home, it is to be put on view for the public for the first time in 45 years, for a period of 6 weeks. There is to be a press conference for the official announcement of the unveiling. There is a hushed but obvious excitement as news people gather from all over the world. The excitement is not only for the possible impact on the public, but also for the impending meeting of scientists from all over the world at the end of the exposition. A meeting to work out, if granted permission, further tests on the authenticity of the Holy Shroud. Tests that began in earnest in the 60s and through the 70s. We meet here a principal character in this drama, Father Peter Rinaldi, a man who has devoted a lifetime to the cause of making the Shroud known to the world. Inside the church, Monsignor Anastasio Balestrero, Cardinal of Turin, welcomes the press. He states that the displaying of the sacred shroud is not motivated in any way, but as an instrument in showing Jesus Christ, the Savior of mankind, in whom all Christians believe and base their religious serenity. He hopes that this occasion will give all interested people in the world a truly spiritual experience. While the press enthusiastically photographs this ancient relic, the church readies itself for the first viewers. The exposition does not officially begin till tomorrow, but there will be a special mass said, and those on hand will be privileged to see the sacred shroud before the opening. We see the earliest pilgrims arriving for this religious experience in rather sparse numbers. As custodians of the shroud since the exile of the royal family in 1946, the Church of Turin, the Cardinal and his offices, have complete control over all matters pertaining to this most sacred relic. In arranging for this exposition, the official posture of the church becomes apparent. They are not openly against all the scientific testing, but are extremely cautious about rushing into things. Their posture states that it matters not to them of scientific proofs. This burial cloth with an image of Christ on it is simply an unspoken article of faith and the most revered relic in all of Christendom. But what of the projections of the expected number of people who will come to see the shroud? From opening day, it becomes apparent, beyond all expectations. In the next weeks, over 3 million people will make the pilgrimage from all over the world and crowd into this plaza. Many have waited a lifetime for this opportunity. This begins a coverage by worldwide media and a spreading of the knowledge of the shroud throughout the world. Could it be its time in history? This article of centuries of veneration. It is kept up a circular staircase behind this door to the exquisitely designed and understated circular chapel. In the preceding 48 hours, in total secrecy, with no fanfare whatsoever, the Holy Shroud is taken out, carefully unrolled, and put into a bulletproof glass encasement filled with a special gas to protect it and mounted for the showing. Go down into the main church, we see the no longer used royal box to the left of the mounting of the shroud. To the right, a magnificent organ mounted over a small altar. How does one describe the shroud? A long, parallel cloth. Consider someone lying down on a long cloth, lengthwise, head at the middle, feet at the end. And from the middle, the cloth lifted over the head and covering the person so that both ends of the cloth meet. It is astonishing how pale and subtle the image appears, a pure sepia, one tone. We are looking at the holy image between the parallel lines of triangular repair patches. From the feet on the left, up the frontal image to the face, and then to the back image.
shit action.
Tim Ritchie is the most sensual man of his time.
How well do you know Brian? Well as you know, Smackhead. I didn't hear anything. You've never said Eddie.
Jim Rockford is hired by rock star Tim Ritchie to find his missing producer, who is probably dead. Monday's appointment, 8:30, The Rockford Files.
For 400 years, the last emperors of China lived a life of incomparable richness and luxury here in the Forbidden City. Ming Dynasty craftsmen more than 14 years to build, and it shows in the exquisite sculpture and design to be found everywhere. The Emperor King Lung ascended the Dragon Throne some 250 years ago. At the same time, far away in France, in the heart of the Cognac region, the Remy Martin family were devoting themselves to making the ultimate brandy, a cognac that would come close to perfection in age, fragrance, and flavor. And this was how Remy Martin XO Special was born. Just as the emperors of China were men who lived lives of incredible splendor, so the connoisseur who appreciates Remy Martin XO Special is someone with a taste and love of life beyond that of ordinary people.
The 1981 Charade 1000 from Daihatsu offers a revolutionary engine design that gives great performance with spectacular mileage. You ride in quiet comfort, while Charade's front-wheel drive and rugged suspension system gives you road-hugging control. And you've got the option of either manual or automatic transmission. Test drive the Charade at any Tai Fat Hong showroom. Tai Fat Hong, sole agent for Charade from Daihatsu.
Two popular drinks from Yao's products are the chrysanthemum tea and the herbal tea. Now Yao presents two more new delicious drinks, Yao's black coffee and sugarcane juice, which are made specially for you. They are available in supermarkets and stores.
People who travel in style prefer the stylishness of Samsonite luggage. Samsonite from the USA.
For decades, was discovered accidentally by painters cleaning the building. Mere coincidence or an omen of what is to come? Arriving is an impressive assemblage of scientific and religious scholars from all over the world, men and women who have devoted years of study and research to solving the mysteries of the sacred shroud. Some believe and some doubt, but all seem to be totally enwrapped with the subject and constantly urging more and more investigation to unlock the secrets of the shroud. And unlike the more conservative church leaders, many religious scholars meeting here are crying out for worldwide recognition of the authenticity of the shroud through scientific proof. Just think of the implications. But what one single event occurred that created this scientific zeal in the study of what up to then was simply a centuries-old venerated religious relic? What event began a movement that is now embracing all facets of space-age science and research? Turin, 1898. To celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Italian Constitution, the Holy Shroud of Turin will be publicly displayed at the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. For the first time in history, the royal family has consented to let the relic be photographed. If the cloth is destroyed, there will at least remain a photographic record. The photographer, Secondo Pia, an amateur with several awards, was chosen and was nervously waiting when the royal procession left the cathedral. There was so little to see on the long, yellowish cloth with the strange markings. Only a vague outline of what looked like two men, but was actually only one visible front and back. All his life, Secondo Pia had been told the man was Jesus Christ. He had to get a perfect photograph. The church, the king, the world was waiting for it. There was no automatic focus or shutter speed in those days. Everything depended on the amount of time a photographic plate was exposed to light through the open lens. Pierre had decided on two exposures, one 14 minutes and one 20. The impatient crowds could be heard outside waiting to enter. He had only 2 hours before the church would reopen. The time was going by so quickly. What if he hadn't focused properly? Too late to think about that now. In his dark room, Secundo was even more nervous. He felt relief as he saw the negative image begin to appear under the developer. His hands shook as he held up the dripping glass. Was it possible? His negative plate contained a positive image instead of the vague impression he had seen on the cloth. Here was a complete photographic likeness of a man whose body was covered with clotted blood, whose side showed a large wound, and whose hands and feet showed the marks of one crucified. In chilling awe, he found himself thinking that he was the first man in almost 2,000 years to gaze on the actual appearance of the body of Christ. Is it possible that there can actually be a photograph of Jesus Christ after 2,000 years? And how does an image of the human body become transformed onto a piece of cloth? This photograph with Pierre in the last row, taken amidst many accusations that Pierre's photographs were fake, hangs on a wall in his son's office. And with a portrait of the elderly Pierre in the background, we asked Giuseppe Pierre of his memories of his father.
There are many memories that bind me to my father. For instance, I remember his mood during the intense waiting period before his work began. The nervousness he felt when he exposed the negative and developed the picture. The emotions he felt when he saw the shroud appear on the plate are known to all because of what has been written.
L'emozione poi che provò quando vide tracciarsi sulla lastra i segni della sindone sono ormai di dominio universale perché tutti gli scritti riportano questo suo ricordo. Un altro punto sul quale insisteva per un suo orgoglio, diciamo quasi personale, era di aver avuto per primo l'idea di fotografare la sindone e di aver voluto questa concessione con assoluto disinteresse.
Another point on which he used to insist, because of his pride, was that he was the first to get the idea to photograph the shroud, but he was not interested in this being attributed to him.
Si è visto come il procedimento fotografico fosse stato pienamente regolare e come il risultato così straordinario fosse dovuto obiettivamente.
Unfortunately, there were many discussions afterwards concerning the merits of his work, but time has done him justice. The photographic process was legitimate and not due to tricks or chemical manipulations. I also remember that he was extremely proud that the royal house and the church authorities trusted him. He was flattered that they gave the assignment to an amateur photographer, even the best amateur in Turin. Another point is that he opened a new page in the history of the shroud. Without the photographs, the shroud would have remained deserving of devotion, but subjected to doubts and hesitations which come up when a relic has not been proved absolutely true. Naturally, I cannot give you any hypothesis when such an important Congress and many significant participants are about to resolve scientific and religious doubt about this illustrious relic of Turin.
Turin, 1931. To celebrate the marriage of King Umberto's son, the Holy Shroud is once again displayed to the public for the first time in 33 years. After much hesitation, the king agrees to let the relic be photographed by Giuseppe Enrie of Turin. Astonished, Enrie examines his developed slides. Like Pierre, his negative plates have mysteriously taken on the properties of positive images. Leo Valla, one of London's top photographers, explained this phenomenon.
Unlike most images, the image on the shroud is a negative image. That means it's reversed from what we would consider to be normal, if we weren't photographers, that is. The result of this is that the result that would normally appear in the camera as a negative, in fact appears as a positive. It was obviously very startling to the first person who photographed the shroud, because this strange image of a few rather indeterminate smudges turned out in the darkroom to be a photographic image, a positive image of very high quality. But at the negative stage, I think the quality of the photographs was absolutely superb. The negative itself was a very well-graded, sharp, although of course a lot of the sharpness was the texture on the cloth, but it was in completely clear focus. The gradation was perfect, the lighting appeared to be soft, good portrait lighting, and the resultant positive was a portrait of just tremendous photographic quality. My job is illusion, for example. I can put somebody in front of perhaps someone standing on the cobbles in Paris 1 minute and standing on the sands in front of the pyramids the next minute and skiing the next. This is quite routine. But with all these modern resources, I consider it to be impossible for anybody to take a positive image and draw it in any way with airbrushes or any technique at all into a negative so that when it were rephotographed could be anything except a caricature. I consider this to be absolutely impossible. The image that is on the shroud is a true photographic image, in my opinion, untouched by hand, not made by man.
On the shroud itself, the face appears like the positive on the left. When reinverted by the photographic process, as seen on the right, the negative slide looks positive. The face shows a swelling on the bridge of the nose and on the right cheek. There is a contusion below the right eye and great damage to the left cheek, nose, and lower lip. The deepest wounds, though, appear on the crown of the head. There is a blood clot on the forehead, like an inverted 3, and possibly took this form because the brow was wrinkled. The blood marks on the back of the head have been caused by something sharp and pointed, such as a caplet of thorns, put on the head and set down with binding material, which would have arrested further descent of these blood clots. The wound on the side marked by a dark stain of flowing blood can be seen on the right side between the 5th and 6th ribs. The nail wound on the wrist is highlighted by a large patch of blood. Trickles of blood on both forearms from the pierced wrists suggest the arms were raised above the head. The scourgements are most noticeable on the upper dorsal region. They are paired, suggesting that a Roman flagrum was used. This whip was provided with paired knobs of lead or bone, and there are 125 marks on the back. The skin had been stripped away. The lower dorsal imprint shows both feet turned inward, the knees bent, one crossed over the other. Rigor mortis kept the feet rigid in that position.
利克基爾係一位藝術家，佢聲言可以證明呢塊布上面嘅影像係假嘅。佢話布上邊所謂耶穌嘅影像，其實係俾人做個手腳整上去㗎。呢種方法14世紀嘅時候喺法國非常流行，好多人都係靠呢門技術嚟謀生。我不妨喺度為大家示範一下。首先係將塊布趁熱擺喺一個濕嘅半浮雕嘅模型上邊，跟住就用手指慢慢咁壓下佢，將嗰個帽嘅樣印喺塊布上邊。呢種做法其實並唔困難，會好順利。冇幾耐，塊布就會同嗰個帽黐得好實，好似一塊面具咁。喺新約福音書入邊曾經提到沒藥同蘆薈油呢種埋葬屍體嘅香料。沒藥係有一種好強嘅偵控作用，我決定用佢嚟試下。初時我只係用沒藥，但發覺佢嘅作用太強，幾乎將塊布整污糟。於是我加入蘆薈油，將佢混和，比例係每樣50%。結果作用啱啱好，唔會一直咁透入嗰塊布入邊嘅纖維，效果 同杜林大教堂嗰塊布印有耶穌嘅樣貌係一樣㗎。
Begin to stroke down the plaque.
With this experiment, Nickel produced an image of
尼克基爾用呢種方法做出咗同杜林大教堂嗰塊布上邊相同嘅影像。最後要試嘅就係睇下，當佢用照片照出嚟之後，是否亦都係產生負片嘅作用。尼克基爾話：我呢項試驗證明咗藝術家係可以憑住佢嘅技術喺布上邊做出一個所需要嘅影像。此外，兩位專門負責管理杜林市大教堂嗰塊布嘅官員亦都表示過，話嗰塊布上面嘅影像係藝術家按照模型所做出嚟㗎。加上14世紀時候呢種技術非常流行，所以我相信杜林市大教堂嗰塊布上面有關耶穌基督嘅影像，亦都係藝術家做出嚟㗎，並非係神蹟。由於佢哋所用嘅方法，正如大家剛才見到我示範一樣，係將影像印喺布上邊，並冇深入纖維入邊，所以出現咗好似照片中嘅負片嘅作用。菲拉斯話：我唔同意尼克基爾嘅講法，我不妨舉幾個例。第一，去到林市大教堂睇嗰塊布嘅人有成300幾萬，而幾乎每一個人喺睇到布上邊嘅影像嘅時候，都異口同聲咁話：呢個影像係冇一隻可以假造㗎，因為上邊嘅痕跡係若隱若現，好難用人手嚟做出嚟。第二，如果係有人假造嘅話，咁點解佢會將釘窿印喺腰部嘅位置，特登同中古時嘅講法背道而馳呢？仲有一點就係，瑞士著名嘅犯罪學家費爾博士曾經喺呢塊布上邊揾到48種不同嘅花粉，透過顯微鏡，佢發現其中有13種花粉只係喺古代巴勒斯坦，即係而家嘅以色列先至有㗎。喺1978年10月，科學家終於有機會去解決呢個疑團。30位美國科學家可以連續4日研究呢塊布，但就唔準拍攝活動影片，只能夠拍硬照。科學家利用 X 光同埋紫外光嚟進行研究工作。但佢哋研究嘅結果又引起咗爭論。本來有一種方法係可以確定呢塊布嘅真抑或假㗎，但好唔好彩呢種方法係唔準使用。呢個被認為最有效嘅方法就係用放射碳測量法嚟斷定呢塊布嘅年份，但咁做一定要攞塊布嘅一部分嚟燒。康迪薩係教會嘅顧問，佢對於美國科學家呢項要求感到詫異。佢話呢項要求係冇一隻可以接受㗎。康迪薩認為呢塊布喺宗教上意義非常重大，如果要為咗求證明而攞部分嚟燒，未免犧牲太大，所以當局唔可以答應咁做。不過核子物理學家高夫博士就提出一個折衷性嘅解決辦法。高夫話：傳統嘅測驗方法係需要攞塊好似手巾仔咁大嘅布嚟燒，但而家我哋新嘅方法只要用一條大約8寸長嘅線就夠晒。高夫博士曾經利用核子加速器去確定有機體嘅年代，並且證明相當準確。佢話：我哋曾經驗過包裹埃及木乃伊嘅布，結果驗出嗰塊布係2500年前嘅物體，而呢個年期同用傳統方法去試驗所得嘅結果相差只係80年，所以我好有信心，認為呢種新式嘅測量法係夠晒準確㗎。究竟呢塊近乎神蹟嘅布係真抑或係假嘅呢？我哋冇話知道，因為教會方面一直都唔肯犧牲其中一小部分嚟做實驗。Never before have church officials sacrificed even the smallest piece of a holy relic for scientific testing. However, 不過而家情形似乎有咗轉機，教廷方面不斷接到有關嘅要求。至於成唔成事，就要睇下教宗約翰保祿2世嘅決定係點。 呢塊布而家已經收翻埋，要到下一個世紀先至會再次公開展覽。可能要到我哋嘅孫嗰代先至會真相大白。菲拉斯話：科學究竟可唔可以證明到耶穌釘十字架同耶穌復活呢件事呢？關於耶穌復活呢回事，係教徒對基督嘅一種信念，佢係一種神蹟，係超乎常理㗎。所以我哋冇法子可以憑住科學方法嚟加以證明。講到話耶穌釘十字架，呢個係歷史事實。正因為咁，令人覺得呢塊布係更加有價值。如果佢上邊嘅影像係真嘅話，咁我哋亦都可以由此知道耶穌基督嘅容貌同埋其他嘅資料。記得曾經有個門徒問耶穌，問佢是否真係喺死後復活，耶穌就對佢話：雖然未有親眼見過，但具有信心嘅人有福了。大搜殺呢個節目係專門記錄科學家、研究人員同探險家嘅心得。本節目係根據書本拍攝而成㗎。下星期同樣時間再會啊！